This is the one that we were messing around with the flour in the pan. That's stuck.
Sorry, Amanda.
That's alright. I probably destroy usually about a third of the cakes that I make.
Do you save them for truffles?
Sometimes. Sometimes.
We just make dry
Candies.
mess up.
Or you could do cake balls with them, I guess.
See, we did that.
Yeah, like the
Johnson
cake
and
balls,
Wales, we
cake
found out
pop
if you
things
take
that
equal
everybody
amounts
thinks
of
are
oil,
great
sugar,
right
and
now.
flour, mixes.
Like I just want a regular cake.
We can mix them all together, and then we make rum balls and things out of them.
Or use British. I've done that before and did a trifle. And we messed up. Sad.
It's one of those, that's the advantage of cake is, you know, you destroy something, you keep it and use it to make something else.
And the high school students really like the rum balls.
Of course they do.
Just kidding.
Oh darn, I missed
That's
it.
it.
I guess we'll have to eat it.
Yeah, the staff and people, they love the rum balls at Fire Rock too. Like to the point where I was told not to make them anymore.
But the crew was so much happier.
You use
Yeah.
those for drum balls? I used
Yeah, rum balls, all your old
Vanilla
pastry stuff.
flavors.
Keep a really good rum cake recipe. They're never the same. Depends on what's on the floor.
Yes, add more rum.
Johnson and Wales.
Is the key to.
Cheryl, that year that we
I,
did Johnson and Wales.
my rum cake
Rum right
recipe
now.
is actually almost like a pound cake that I use and just add rum to.
Okay,
The
we're all watching,
key,
no pressure.
yeah, the key is to keep everything level.
Now, you didn't put any frosting on your cardboard before you
Underneath.
put your cake on?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
She's good. Mine falls off.
Mine too.
No, it's because it's sponge cake, so it stuck itself.
Okay.
Because, like, this is how it comes out of the pan. It has that cleared off spot, so it just,
Sticks.
it basically sticks itself.
How do you keep your cardboard from getting dirty while you frost? So you can use it for presentation. Are you going to move that whole cake to another thing one? Or are you
Depends.
using the waxed ones?
These are not the wax ones. These are just regular ones. Depends on what I would be doing. If I was doing it on a board
For competition?
for competition that I was going to present, you wouldn't leave it just like this. It would be one of the waxed
Waxed
ones,
ones,
so
yeah.
you can usually just wipe them off.
That's what I thought.
Or like if I'm doing a wedding or a birthday cake or something, it's usually wrapped in. But yeah, there's, it's a foil paper
Like
combination
Mylar type
thing that you can just wipe off. But yeah, like these you wouldn't use anyway because it's just the plain cardboard. Any fat or anything you have in your icing is going to show up on it. So level being the name of the game here. Very sharp serrated knife. You usually just try to stay with where the edge of the cake is because that's going to be level anyway. So you're just cutting off where I've had a lot of practice.
A chef this summer taught us to just always watch the knife.
Yep.
Don't watch the cake. Just always watch
I
your knife.
was going to say,
Keep it
if
level.
you could see it, I didn't look up from this cake while I did
Yeah.
that. And I went around the entire outside of it and then cut across rather than just trying to cut it straight across. Because that's usually where you wind up in, oh, there's a divot here, or it's not level here. Like I said, I've had a lot of practice that I can just like look at it and be like, we're going to do it this way.
So how long would that cake have baked in a conventional oven?
About 17 to 18 minutes.
Did you use convection for 10 minutes?
We used the convection and they took about 12.
And did you have your fan on low or on high?
High.
And why?
Because that is what is going to give you that golden brown color.
Okay.
It's moving the air faster, so it's going to brown the fats
Because I've
a
had the
little bit faster.
convection on the high fan sometimes do weird things where I get these little whips going on the top.
You usually have to turn it when you have your fan on high.
Okay.
If you rotate it, like, so 12 minutes, if you rotate it at 6, you're not going to get those whips on it.
Yeah, it made really weird cake batter in ice cream cone
Yeah.
bizarre things. It was really strange.
That's fans do weird things to different kinds of food. And everybody's like, oh, convection ovens are so great, and there's days that I wish I just had a regular convention oven. So that's how our icing turned out. And it moves like that. And when you're doing this, like we're gonna put this little layer of icing in the middle. If they're putting some sort of filling inside of their cake, you're still gonna have the icing on the outside, and it goes about a ½ inch in from the edge of the cake. And that's because even just the weight of the other cake is going to push it out to the edge.
No, you didn't put any simple syrup on top of it.
I did not.
In a hurry
Were
That
you intending to?
Yes, we were intending to.
Okay.
We didn't do it because I usually don't do it. Because you usually take like apricot jam and mix it with hot water so that you have, and it just adds a little bit more moisture into the cake. This cake it's actually not that dry. Sponge cake can tend to be dry, is why you brush it with that simple syrup.
Oh, do you not use disposable pastry bags? We use disposables.
I have disposable ones.
Okay.
I
so why are you
usually
using that one?
I usually reserve my disposable bags for when I do color,
Okay.
so that I don't
Because
ruin
those are
these ones.
so flippin' hard to clean, and to get the stuff, the grease
I
layer
use
out of.
really, really hot water and no soap.
I just buy lots of disposable bags.
I have disposable ones. I
I buy the Rule 500. Yeah. And I get the smaller ones too. Because,
these
yeah.
are smaller ones. I have at home. I have some of the big 22 inch bags, and I actually have a big. It's probably 2 inches wide. It's called an icing tip. That it takes. I can decorate a cake in 5 minutes with it because it's huge.
Which so much on there. So do you normally freeze your cakes before you frost them and crumb coat them?
Almost always.
Okay.
I usually crumb coat them, and then freeze them, and then pull them out and decorate them.
Right. Okay.
Just because it gives you a more consistent product to work with.
What, do you use a different icing to crumb coat?
Nope.
No.
Nope. It's usually just a thinner coating. I'll show you when we do the sides.
But you said you didn't really like this icing for fridge, is that, or did I misunderstand?
Yeah. You can't really. I thought you said you can't.
You can't. There's a fine line because it's a crumb coat and it's such a thin coating. When it goes into the freezer and comes back out, it usually holds up fine. If it was a thicker coating of icing, like just the regular icing on it, I wouldn't freeze it or refrigerate it after that was on it.
Oh.
See, this is the part that all the students like. They're like, oh, look at all this extra cake we get to have. And this one, we're actually going to do upside down. I always like to have the pan side of my top layer on the top because it just gives you those more defined edges. Makes it easier to decorate, especially when you get into drapes and ruffles and.
I wasn't going to say that. Look how nice the bottom of that cake looks. Nice job, Amanda.
Right. That was the pan that Justin had ready for us. And I will tell you this, like he did the spray and the flour, I almost always use parchment paper. So like I do a flip and a tear and it's done. So when we do the cake decorating, we're actually going to do a quick crumb coat on this, which is why it doesn't matter that there's crumbs in that icing.
Now, I noticed you don't have a cup of hot water near you. Do you not do that?
Not for like a crumb coat. Like I'll actually take all my stuff back and make sure that there's no crumbs on anything. And then when I go to do the final icing, I have hot water. And I actually usually boil water, especially since we're working with actual buttercream. But then you start with the icing in the middle.
One of the things I do so that my kids have a lot of cakes to practice on the baking team is that I'll have the entire baking class all make the same recipe of cake, and then we freeze them all, and then the kids who are doing cake decorating don't have to spend all their time after school baking the cakes. Then
They
I can
already
just
have
start
cakes
pulling
to
them
them.
out, and they can just keep practicing frosting until, and then the final one they do for competition, they actually bake from start to finish. But to just practice frosting
Yeah,
and
to
decorating,
practice.
it takes too long. It takes too much of your practice time to bake cakes all
Yeah,
the time.
when you get into, okay, I have to bake a cake, and then I have to ice a cake, and then I have to decorate a cake, and I mean, you're usually looking at a solid, you know, depending on how much detail goes into the decorations, you're looking start to finish. I usually do a cake in about 4 hours. But I mean, you have to bake it, and you have to cool it, and then you have to crumb coat it.
Can you use the cake dummies? Like just to practice, but not do that.
You mean like styrofoam, like
Yeah, the
like they do
styrofoam.
for 4-H, the foam? It gets really expensive.
It gets really expensive, and you can only reuse them so many times before you have to be like, okay, well, this one's done.
Oh, you have cases. Oh, you have cases, use them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't. We don't.
So, I think they're from Michelle. Actually, the shoes that I pulled, but I have pieces and pieces.
Well, and like, there's a difference between using like just plain styrofoam and using a cake form. Because if you use plain styrofoam, your students are going to hate you because they're going to be like, here's an air bubble and there's an air bubble, and
Exactly.
I had when I very first started, one of my instructors tried to get us to decorate on just straight styrofoam.
Well, and 4-H commonly uses just straight styrofoam.
Yeah, see, they have to keep them for a week.
Yeah.
Instead of
Yeah.
state fair.
I had a state fair reserve champion cake that I did my very last year in 4-H, and it was a huge 7-tier 25th wedding anniversary, rainbow colored roses and flowers all cascading down it, and we had to get it from Casper to Laramie, or Casper to
Here,
Douglas.
Douglas, yeah, for the state fair. Nightmare.
It didn't make it,
Yeah.
and I didn't feel bad about it because I was over it by that time, because I think that was the year that there was 2 weeks between
County fair.
Casper's County and then State Fair, so